Thank you so much for the lovely introduction. And I'm so happy to be part of today's event. Thank you so much for joining us. Before I go in the details of the topic, well, the topic is going to be on emotional healing and emotional safety and meeting the broken parts of our own soul. So before I go in the detail of the topic, I would first, give a brief introduction of myself. My PhD was related to the transpersonal aspect of psychology. So the topic of my PhD was psychology of extremism, understanding the polarity of fundamentalism and modernism. I know the topic is very philosophical, so I'm gonna tell you in a simpler language. Every soul has a central point, which is called heart. And heart is where the intentions are formed. So I'm more focused on the traditional school of thought in a way that your cognition, your behaviors are dependent on the intention that are built in your heart. While the modern psychology talks about mind, body, and spirit, we do talk about how do we need to behave when we are outside, how do we have to communicate with other people. But something within us break. And we don't know that. Why there is a void in us. What's happening within us. And how do we can fill that void. The notion is not been understood in the modern world. It has more to do with the heart, your intention, from where it begins to heal the heart. So the PhD topic was mostly based on the notion of the heart. And then, my bachelor's was in psychology and journalism. Then I did my master's in applied psychology. My MPhil was a blend of conflict resolution with psychology. And PhD, I just mentioned how it was. And after my PhD, I did some work in transpersonal psychology. My training was in spiritual psychology, hypnotherapy, and neuro-linguistic programming. And I'm author of 3 books. One is Resonance of the Soul. The other one is Decenter, which is very much based on the mystical philosophy of your heart. And the third one, it just came out. It's Calm Your Storm. It's a self-help book for many people trying to numb themselves just because they don't want to feel. And one thing which is very important for us to understand is you cannot heal the pain that you refuse to feel. You first have to accept what's happening in your own reality. So the first question that I'm going to answer is how Islamic psychology is different than modern psychology, because it is based on heart. And now the neuropsychology has also conducted research that your heart can feel the emotions. That was long ago mentioned in Quran. So it's more about a soul goes through the different stages of nafs. And before we talk about the stages, I'm going to tell you the category of nafs. The first stage of nafs is nafsul ammara, which is ego. The second stage of nafs is nafsul lawama, which is recognizing your mistakes. The third is called nafsul mulhima, that is inspiring soul. And the fourth is nafsul mutmaina, that is a soul at peace. So the nafs goes through all these stages. You have to realign with your heart. Your nafs have to be realigned with your heart. The example could be more like if your desires, if your nafs is leading you, you're putting yourself towards the lower self. But if you are aligning your heart with your ruh, your heart emits the light of ruh, which is your spirit. And that's the essence of Islamic psychology. We first talk about heart, and then the psychology is built over it. The example could be moon and sun, the analogy that I would like to give. Moon doesn't reflect its own light. It's basically sun. That's how our heart is. So when your heart is aligned with your ruh, it emits light. Purification of heart is most important in the work of healing, holistic healing. We talk about different, parts of mind, which is conscious mind, subconscious mind, unconscious mind. But knowing the fact that subconscious mind is actually your central, your nucleus of your existence. The conscious mind is related to prefrontal cortex. For example, you all are sitting here listening, talking, and trying to figure out how we can, help ourselves in terms of healing, right? This is your conscious mind connected with the prefrontal cortex. Then is the unconscious mind, which is connected with the amygdala, flight and fight responses. For example, if there is a snake in front of you, what you're going to do? You're not going to think anything, you're going to just escape or maybe do something, right? So this is a fight and flight response. But the subconscious mind is basically the nucleus of your existence, which is called your soul in theological terms or in the transpersonal terms, where all the emotions are there, where all the feelings are there. Sometimes we don't want to see who we are, our own reality, because we're too busy in the modern life. We repress our feelings, we repress our emotions, we repress our thoughts. And where do they go? They live in that subconscious compartment. And 2 years, 3 years, 4 years down the lane, it is manifested in terms of emotional challenges, sometimes somatic challenges, sometimes mental health challenges, because there is a lot more repression. And once you are not accepting what's happening with you, you're not healing yourself. We make it worse for ourselves. We think that, we are putting a Band-Aid. By putting a lid on your life will never help you heal. So Islamic psychology basically helps you understand with all the repression in the nucleus of your existence, which is your heart. So today the topic would be more based on the notion of heart and what do we need to do when we have a lot more storms in our lives, the traumas, the emotional challenges. How do we have to address them? So the modalities that I typically practice, these modalities are inner dynamic model, which is very transpersonal in its nature. It helps you meet the broken parts of your own soul. There would be people coming to me telling me, we don't understand, but we feel like crying all the time. We don't understand. Why do we cry? We don't understand what's happening in our lives. You know why is it that? It's because of all the years of repression that many women, they do. Because they don't want to deal it. They're so busy with their family or work life. They think that it's not that important, but that is important. You can't deny that. An inner dynamic model basically talks about your whole existence has different parts of personality. Broken part, sad part, happy part, accomplished part, motivational part. It could be different parts, right? So whatever phase of life you're in, one of the part hijacks your entire personality in its totality, and your behaviors are being affected by that part. For example, if somebody is feeling sad, their entire day will feel dark. They don't want to do anything. They don't feel like, cooking, writing, or, whatever the hobbies are. It's because of that sad part. But again, the question is, how can we address that? By sitting with that part. That part is just like a child. Imagine a child coming to you telling you, hey, mommy, I'm hurt. And you look at the child and you say, I don't want to deal with you right now. I'm too busy. How would that child feel? Right? That's exactly what we do to our broken parts. They're like children. They want attention. And when we are going through a rough patch of life, we don't want to deal with it. We just repress it. And then those parts, they're manifested in different kinds of psychological and emotional challenges. So you have to first, this model basically help us in understanding those broken parts, those fragmented parts, and talking to them as if they're the part of your own family. They're just like family members, and integrating them in your core self. This is a holistic model of psychology that not only talks about symptoms or exoteric relations, it talks about something really deep, which is the bond with yourself. When God created human, the soul has always a yearning to have a bond with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But we tend to fill that void by getting attached with our own desires, with people. We don't understand the art of detachment with the worldly things, because then we get conditioned, right? And that's when the problem arises. When the problem arises, we are like, oh, I don't know, I'm not feeling healed. There is a emptiness in me. And why is that? Because the soul yearns for the attachment with the higher being. And we contaminate it with a lot of attachment issues. Imagine if there was a glass vase and I put it at the edge of the table and it falls down. It will break, right? I fix it again and I put it there again and it falls down again. The problem is not with the vase. The problem is with me. Why am I putting it there over and over again when I know it's gonna fall? When I know that's not gonna help. It's basically your attachment with a certain kind of style, lifestyle, with a certain kind of people, with a certain kind of things. And then the heart cries, why me? So learning the art of detachment is extremely imperative in Islamic world, especially when we become too focused on worldly things, on worldly relations. And through the practical experience of mental health and healing practice, I have seen that it's not about the external factors that affect us. It's something within that affects us. We cannot put blame on situations and on circumstances. Healing and everything lies within you. You just have to purify your soul in order to see what's happening within you. You cannot heal if you're all the time focusing on this happened. Okay, if something happened to you, something very traumatic, ask yourself a question. Why did this happen? What did I do that this had to happen? Yes, people are mean sometimes. They're unkind. But this is our ability to unable to recognize the true colors. Whatever happened in the past, extrapolate the lesson from the past, learn from it, and move on. Moving on would be easier then. Because if you're stuck in the past, you won't be able to move on. If you're stuck in putting blame externally, you won't be able to move on. Because you're not accountable for the other person, but you're accountable for yourself. How do you have to heal? And if you are not getting yourself accountable, then you will spiral. You will spiral in that notion, in that mindset. Whatever is happening in our lives, it's happening for some reason. There is a reason behind it. Some people come to me and tell me, I don't know why, but I feel pain every single time. The pain keeps coming back to me. Why? I asked them a question, why do you think that pain keeps coming back to you? Tell me the answer. They don't have an answer. But I have. When you don't learn from your pain, it will keep coming back to you. You will be afflicted. This all notion of anxiety, depression, labeling people, hey, this is an anxious person, this is a depressed person. In my opinion, everybody has some kind of anxiety. Everyone has some kind of depression at some phase of their life. We are human. No title can protect us of not having a human experience. Everyone has some kind of human experience because in Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned that we will test you through fear, loss of food, fruits, lives. So there will be a dark phase of life. Even when Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, his son passed away, his eyes did shed tears and his heart did feel grief. So whenever you are in that phase of life, understand this is a fitrah. Coming back to your primordial essence is the true purpose of life. Unlearning the learned patterns. Because at the end of the day, healing cannot happen in therapy rooms. Healing cannot happen in the doctor's offices. It will happen within you. You have to unveil yourself. You have to unveil your heart in order to know what's going on. How can I heal myself? Sit with that part. Because if there is no healing, you will be growing a seed of fear. And your all behaviors and cognitions will be somehow affected by that fear. And where does fear come from, by the way? It comes from the place which is emotionally unsafe. And by saying so, emotionally unsafe, it doesn't mean that there is an absence of risks. There is an absence of trust, self-trust. Always remember that. We think that absence of risk will put us in the situation where we will feel emotionally safe. No. Many people after their trauma still feel emotionally unsafe. Why? Because there is an absence of trust within themselves. And my job as a practitioner is not to, just make other person heal. It's like putting something in their awareness, their own essence. They're a creature of God. And how to protect yourself. How to look within. Life is beyond these external factors. When you focus your attention inward, you tend to find answers of those questions that you have been seeking in your entire life. Focus inwardly and find an answer. A therapist, a psychologist, a coach, nobody can answer you. Only you can find answers within yourself. That's how God has created us. That's why people going to therapy sometimes, they stay in therapy. They spiral. Because when you're constantly talking about your pain, it's becoming chronic. You're reliving that reality of your life, reliving in the past. However, the actual essence is to learn from your past and to move on in your life. Otherwise, the pieces of your soul would always be fragmented. And to heal it, you have to look inwardly to find that peace. Peace doesn't lie outside. It lies within you. Look from the eye of heart, not from the external eye. Then you would find an answer. I would like to read a story from my book that I mentioned about my friend and also my client. And This story is very dear to my heart because I kind of grew up in an emotionally safe environment. So I did not know how emotionally unsafe environment look like. And now that when I do practice, I see people, I meet their pain, I see them crying. I see that hollowness that they feel within themselves and in their lives. It makes me contemplate. It makes me reflect. What can we learn from it? How do we have to move forward? So this is the story of one of my friends that I mentioned in this book, Calm Your Storm, so that you all can relate. It's very narrative, a beautifully written book. So we were in college. The world around us was buzzing with noise of exams, tea in paper cups, whispered crushes, rushed assignments. But she always sat in the corner of it all, like she wasn't really part of it. She was not shy, just far away. There was something about her like her spirit had been somewhere darker than her body could explain. She smiled sometimes, but it didn't reach her. And her shoulders were always curled in, like she was trying to disappear a little more each day. I did not know her story, but I knew sadness when I saw it. I knew the way unspoken grief wraps itself around a person's bone. One day, I sat beside her after class. I offered her my extra sandwich. She said thank you, and we shared a bench that smelled like dust and sun. That was how it started, quietly. I would try to talk about little things, classes, books, things that made me laugh. She listened, sometimes nodded, rarely spoke. There were days when she would just sit and cry silently, staring into nothing, not dramatic, not attention-seeking, just this soft, aching release. Like the sorrow had nowhere else to go. Once I told her about a gratitude journal. I said sometimes it helps. Just writing down one good thing a day. She looked at me, smiled a little, but her eyes said, "You don't understand. There is nothing good here." And maybe she was right. Because what I didn't understand then is this: gratitude does not grow where there is no safety. You cannot build thankfulness in soil poisoned by fear. You cannot force light into a soul that has never known warmth. Later, I learned what she never told. That she grew up in a house where love was used like a weapon, where silence was safer than truth, where her tears were inconvenient and her voice was too loud, where being invisible was the safest way to exist. That's the thing about childhood. It doesn't stay in your childhood, it follows you. She had learned too early that emotions were dangerous, that softness made her weak, that love meant pain, that people hurt the ones they cared for, and that it was somehow her fault. And so she cried because somewhere inside her, she knew something. This wasn't right. She knew that this hurts. She knew that she wasn't supposed to live like this. I stopped trying to fix her. I stopped giving her advice. I just used to sit with her and listen to her. Sometimes it's not about what you say. Sometimes it's about how you stay. And that's all that matters. Staying with someone who's emotionally aching. And if there is nobody around you, Just sit with yourself and reassure that part of yours that everything is going to be okay. Because at the end of the day, it's you that matters. It's your healing that matters. It's your inner wisdom that will guide you. Only if you're able to sit with it, not to repress it. I don't know where is she now, but her story taught me good few lessons. That sometimes it's not that you are trying to fix everything. Hey, let me fix, this person is feeling sad, let me fix. No. Sometimes people require your attention. Just staying with them. And sometimes, if there is no one around you, it's your own self, your own soul, your own healing. Nobody will fix you. It's you. Healings come from within. You cannot try to fit a circular spot in a triangular shape, or a triangular shape in a circular spot, or vice versa, right? Because the piece is within you. You just have to unveil the reality. Unveil the reality of your soul. And that's what it is. It taught me a lot of things. The other thing that I noticed in my practice as well, and I mentioned this story as well in the book, that what you think you create. That's why emotionally decluttering yourself is so imperative. Imagine your mind as a sponge. You put the sponge in a dirty water and you squeeze the sponge. What happens? Imagine your heart as an orange. So if you squeeze orange juice will come out. If you squeeze lemon juice will come out. So people who say mean stuff or unkind stuff to you, it doesn't define your worth. It just tells you how much hurt they are. The words are the reflection of the heart. So if you have ever encountered negative self-deprecating talk, it's not your fault. It just needs your attention. Your mind, your existence is just like a fire alarm. Have you ever seen when there's a house on fire, fire alarm beeps? It tells you something needs to be done. Imagine your life when you have a lot more in you and all of a sudden it's manifested in emotional, psychological, or physiological challenges. Your body is your fire alarm telling you something is wrong, do something. Do something to heal yourself. We are just like fire alarms. You cannot blame your body, you cannot blame your mind. It just tells you, hey, you are not paying attention here, this part of yours. Something is hurting, something is oozing blood that you can't see from your eyes, from your external eyes, but you can feel from the eyes within. So never blame yourself for something happening in your life. It's basically the alarm, the warning telling you, come. And our faith, our tradition, Islamic tradition is so beautiful. Even in Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned that I am always with my creatures, with my man that I created. We are never alone. The heaviest feeling in life is having a feeling of loneliness. When we feel unseen, unheard, unheld. That's when we feel heavy. That's when we feel lonely. And that's when we feel we're breaking down. But the reality is, Allah loves broken hearts. We tend to find solution from the outside world that somebody will fix us. somebody will stay with us. Somebody can hear us, but that somebody is not anybody else but yourself and your connection with God. When you mend your soul, it's just like a kintsugi, the art in Japanese, when something is broken, they fix it with the aluminum gold thing in the middle, and it becomes, then the price goes significantly high, the price of that item. And that's exactly how your soul is. When it's broken, you try to mend it, you fix it, it becomes imperative. It becomes beautiful for you, for your existence. All your feelings and all your emotions are not coming from your mind and brain. They're coming from your higher self. The center of your soul, which is your heart. You cannot deny that. You cannot veil that. When you focus on heart, you heal. When you focus on mind, you just manage. You don't resolve. So the attention is all inward. It's not outward at all. Why do you think that depression and anxiety is on rise these days? It's because we are too focused on the modern notion of psychology. We think that by labeling everyone that, hey, he has mental health issues, he has these mental health challenges. Some people do have. I'm not denying that. But a person going through a painful patch of life, a rough patch of life, who just lost his mother, who just lost his beloved relationship, they can feel depressed too. And if people like that are coming to me and telling me, hey, I'm depressed, I tell them, that's okay, you have to be. Because if you won't feel that sadness, then it is something clinical for me. Because you cannot eliminate the human essence from you. And if you do, if you're becoming emotionally numb, then you're eliminating that essence. You don't live fully. You just try to see the survival modes. How can I survive? And that's what makes us human. Embracing the broken parts of your personality, embracing those all emotions that you are going through. Embracing yourself. That will make you a whole again. So when you let your nafs lead you, you don't feel a whole. But when you align your heart with your ruh, your heart emits the light of ruh. That's a higher self. When does moon emit full light? When it's full moon. It means when moon is directly facing the earth, that's when it starts emitting full light. Or the sun, that's when it starts emitting the light. When moon faces the sun, right? So imagine that sun is your ruh and moon is your heart. And it's emitting full light. Because when you're focusing on the notion of heart, that's when you evolve emotionally. That's when you heal. This psychology is actually invented by Muslims. They invented it. The whole healing traditions, aromatherapy, meeting broken parts of your soul, was all that invention. But when we modernize the notion, we tend to eliminate its actual essence. So there is a hadith as well that talks about if a sinner commits sin, there's a black dot in the heart, right? So the black dot, what does that black dot signify? And why there is a notion of heart? Because it's so important. The intentions are born here in the heart, and your cognition and your behavior are affected by your heart. So when there's a black dot, that's a covering of that. It doesn't mean that the other person has a bad heart. It means the other person has lost the access to their heart. There is a covering, there is a barrier. So you have to dissolve that barrier in order to have that access. Sit with yourself. reassure yourself everything is going to be fine. I'm here for some reason. Why did something happen to me? But I have to learn from it. Stay with yourself instead of judging. We judge ourselves a lot. And that's when the problem arises, when you start judging yourself. So I'm going to mention a beautiful story of one of my clients. I asked her permission to publish her story in my book. It's a small little story, but because of the privacy reasons, I have fictionalized the name. But I'm going to read this story for you to have the better understanding. When I first met Zara, her body sat in the room, but her spirit had not yet returned. She was 32, recently divorced, a newly diagnosed lady with an autoimmune disease that left her fatigued, inflamed, and, in her words, in commas, a stranger inside my own skin. That's what she said. What unraveled her the most wasn't the illness or betrayal, but the sheer loss of identity. She had always been the strong one, the fixer, the planner, but now she couldn't hold a grocery bag without wincing. She had no answers. During our sessions, she wept in silence, not dramatic tears, not storytelling tears, just quiet, exhausted. An exhausted kind of sorrow. It took months for a shift to happen, not a cure, not a solution, but a flicker. One evening, she shared a memory. There's this old woman who used to live next door to us when I was little. And she would water this tiny patch of dead ground in front of her house every day. For years, nothing grew. One spring, we moved back for a summer, and there it was, a single wild rose growing where she poured her faith. Zara paused and then whispered and said, "I think I'm watering my own ground now." That was profound. That was her alchemy. Not a resolution, but a reframe. She began writing letters to herself, not just from her now self, but from her future self, she would say. She has not arrived yet, but she's writing back to me through these words. Zara kept returning to that image of the old woman with her watering can. In her mind, it wasn't just an old patch of soil, it was her own soul, barren from grief and stripped by betrayal. But what the old woman had known quietly and stubbornly was this: not all growth is visible. Some roots dig deep before they dare reach for the sky. That's what it is for us. The growth doesn't need to be visible. It happens within. And healing is never linear. It's a process. Don't judge yourself in that process, or else you will be lost. Life is beyond that. When you understand it from the eyes within, you will notice and you will start connecting the dots, whatever is happening in your life. Why is it happening? There's one very profound story of healing as well. There was a guy who had this excruciating dental pain, and he went to the dentist. The dentist prescribed him an antibiotic and a painkiller. And he had some bad infection, maybe the bacterial one. That's why he gave, prescribed antibiotics, perhaps. But that guy was very poor. He said, "I won't be able to afford antibiotic, but I'm gonna get painkiller." So he got painkiller. He kept on eating painkillers. 3 months down the lane, he passed away. You know why? Because he did not resolve the pain. He just tried to manage it. Life is exactly like that. If you are in pain, if you're emotionally hurting, if your soul is hurting, don't band-aid it. Sit with it. Because the healing is in you. God lives in your heart. Talk to him and have that attachment. Worldly relations will never fill that void that your soul yearns. When you will sit with your pain, you will understand your pain. You will learn from it. Because in pain, there is a wisdom. There's a thin line difference between pain and suffering. Pain is inevitable, but suffering is avoidable. What happens when we are afflicted with pain? We suffer. We think a lot. We keep thinking. Because then pain becomes familiar to the brain. And brain loves familiarity. That's why healing looks painful to us. Because we're not familiar with what healing looks like. When you will sit with the pain, you will understand that yes, I needed that. I was not understanding my own life. I was not understanding my own reality. When you sit with your pain, you understand. And if you don't understand, you will be, keep getting afflicted by the pain. Extrapolate the lesson and learn from it and put it in your life and move on. Everything right now happening in your life is happening for some reason. There is a reason behind it. Later in your life, you will be able to connect the dots. Okay, if something happened, why did this happen? Now it makes sense to me. Because now you won't be thinking from a judgment perspective. You will be thinking from a neutral perspective, that unbiased perspective. And that's what matters the most. That's how healing looks like. You won't immediately feel healing. You won't be able to see healing, but you will be able to feel it. This is a process. It will have its ups and downs. That's how it is. But at least you will know. You'll be a whole again. You won't be able to put band-aid then. You'll be like, okay, I understand. Why did this happen to me? I have to learn it in order to protect myself from further harm. That's what prevention and healing looks like. It's for the resilience. The pain is for the resilience. The pain is for our own understanding. The pain is, it's sent by God. It's a blessing. It's a blessing. I see blessing in disguise in pain. The moment you stop suffering and you stop understanding, that very moment you evolve. Suffering you can easily avoid. So reframe your thought every single time. When you say, why me? Ask yourself, why did this happen to me? And then see it from the other person's lens, from the neutral person's lens. That's called perceptual position. You'll be able to understand that. Why? Where was I wrong? Instead of, blaming other person. Other person may be unkind. I'm sure there are many. The world is full of unkind people. But we can't change people. What we can do is we can change ourselves and how we see things, how we heal. And that's what matters the most to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That how we are moving forward in our healing journey. Because when God created human, angel asked that you already have created angels. So they are, constantly worshiping you and making, prayers. Why human? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala responded, I created human because he will make mistakes, he will accept it and rectify it. And that's what I love about him. That's the essence of a human soul. When something happens, it's not your fault. This is in our fitrah. We can make mistakes, but the moment you accept, you acknowledge, you rectify, that very moment you evolve. And that's the core essence of Islamic psychology, coming back to your primordial nature instead of failing it, your primordial essence like a newborn, unlearning the learned, conditioned patterns of the world, of the external world. That's the essence. So I will close my talk, and I'm opening the house for question and answers if you have, and I will be more than happy to answer that. Thank you.
This journey, how are we going to understand the science of healing?
Science of healing, you're asking how you will understand that? So imagine any event of your life that gave you trauma. Think about it. Whatever it is. Close your eyes and think about it. Right? So when you think about that, instead of blaming the external event, see it from the eyes within. That why did this happen to you? Where were you lacking that this had to happen to you? You will have an answer. Your soul knows the answer. I cannot give you an answer for this, that how something happened to you and why something happened. Your soul knows the answer. So when you sit with it, you find answers. You find healing. Because most of the time, healing is not about talking about pain. Maybe it's a step to healing. We can talk, we can vent out. Healing is more about fixing it by looking inwardly.
Getting lessons from that.
Lessons in understanding, where was I wrong? Because most of the time we blame people, and there are people who hurt us. I'm not saying that they don't hurt us. They do hurt us, but you cannot change the other person. Accepting that is the first step. But changing yourself it's in your control. Understanding where just shift the focus from external to internal, inwardly, and that's when healing happens. Why people are not mostly healed? They're unhealed, even though they are going to the therapy sessions, doing a lot more stuff, but still they cry. 5-10 years down the lane, they're still crying, they're still feeling the pain, the excruciating pain. Why? Because they were band-aiding it. The moment you recognize your worth, you start putting boundaries out there, because mostly I have seen that women unhealed, they don't have boundaries. We are too afraid to say no, because the society has conditioned us in a way that we have to say yes. Then you will be a good mother. You have to say yes, then you'll be a good wife. You have to say yes, then you'll be a good daughter. Obedience. But that's not how it is. You have to start learning how to put boundaries out there. You know, when I talk about boundaries, people have this, again, another question that, oh, we will sound very selfish. No, there's a difference between selfish and having a boundary. Selfishness is more about when you are giving priority to your wants or what other people's need, right? Boundaries are more like when you are giving priority to your needs over your wants. For example, if your best buddy calls you and says, hey, I want to go out for a coffee, can you come? And imagine you're dead tired. You have been working the entire day. You have been, attending your family, and then there is another call and you don't want to go. You don't want to drive. You're like, oh, I need rest. My body needs rest. But my best friend is calling me and she's so sweet. She's saying, so I'm going to go. Here, you're not prioritizing your need. Here, you have to put a self-boundary. No, I'm tired today. We'll meet next time. Just a hypothetical example. That's self-boundary, where you're prioritizing your need. You first have to differentiate between needs and wants. We don't know the difference between needs and wants. Most of the time, we have this people-pleasing attitude, and we're focused on wants. How other person will perceive us. Oh, we don't want to hurt other person. No, that's your need. Your body is demanding that. Put a boundary out there, self-boundary. Setting boundary is the first step to healing.
I'm going to write.
Perfect. I'm happy to know that. Any other questions? Yes. How to avoid suffering? Don't spiral. Suffering comes, for example, again, an example. I'm going to, explain you with examples so that it's easier for you to understand. If there's a couple, divorce happens, unwanted divorce. Now I'm going to talk about just wife, not her, since all the women are here. Wife is emotionally traumatized. She never wanted that divorce, but this happened. She's thinking all about it, that why did this happen to me? Why me? There is a process of grief. She had to shed tears, feel the pain in the heart. But if it keeps going like this, constantly, she's thinking about the past, constantly, that's the point where you start suffering. Ask yourself questions. Here, when somebody like that would come to me, I will let her cry. I'll be like, okay, cry. It's important for you to get it out. Tell me, how did you feel? How are you feeling now? But after 2 to 3 sessions, I will be like, how can we fix it? Now tell me about it. Okay, the relationship was toxic. But what do you think? Where were you wrong in that relationship? And most of the time, you know what the answer is? I was in love with that man. I was unable to see through it. Because, loving somebody shouldn't make you blind. Love is for God, right? Especially when it comes to marriage and such relations, you have to have that eye to see, okay, if there is a red flag, we need to address that. You can't just let it go. Start communicating, start talking. And most importantly, talk to yourself if you really want to heal. Nobody will give you an answer because you know yourself better. You know your heart better. Or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows. So when you sit in isolation, the inner dynamic model that I typically practice with the patients of trauma, it's exactly like that. I sit with my patient, I sit with their trauma, and I let them go in that trance state. And their part, the broken part, starts talking to them. It's beautifully how it unfolds. It's beautiful how it unfolds. They find answers that they have been seeking for so long because they found an emotionally safe place. It's coming from that point of emotional safety. So that's how you can avoid suffering. Don't spiral. Think from the other lens, from the lens of your heart, from the eye of your heart. Okay. Of course. Yes.
So, my question can be a little bit extensive.
Mm-hmm.
Like in your story, you read the college girl.
Mm-hmm.
So my question is, everybody had their traumas in their childhood,
Mm-hmm.
and then we carry our traumas in our daily lives. How can we recognize that, and how can we purify ourselves from our childhood traumas that brings us like bad habits or things?
Yeah, would you like to mention a specific story so I would be able to understand your question in a better way? For example, what kind of trauma and what kind of behavior?
Yes, let's give the example that in your story,
Mm-hmm.
for example, that college girl, she was alone, isolating herself all the time,
Mm-hmm.
and then she had sorrow all the time, and not speaking a lot, not expressing herself.
Mm-hmm.
So this was coming like the family she grew up,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, like in this case, at that point, how can a person could recognize her traumas that's coming from childhood, and then in this case, a professional help is really needed, or a person who is like well aware of herself could do it on her own. I don't
So
know if I
a person going through trauma is not well aware of themselves at that very point, because mostly when you are suffering with trauma,
Mhm.
you are unable to see your own story from the third lens. You are in that subjective experience. You can't find answers at that very point because it's traumatizing for anyone. Trauma can manifest in different in that very point. You need a professional help. Definitely you need somebody to guide you. That's the point where you start recognizing, okay, if I'm not expressing myself, if I'm feeling isolated, if I don't feel like talking to anyone and just sit alone, something is wrong. And the person knows that something is wrong. But what is wrong, they don't know sometimes. They need awareness. For that, they need to seek professional help, no matter what. Because when you have a brain fog, when you have a trauma, your mind doesn't have this ability to heal itself immediately. Because it's like years of trauma, that years of repression. But when the trauma is fresh, you can actually sit with it. And you can be guided too, in the form of dreams sometimes, when you're connected with yourself.
So in this case, to be diagnosed, we need a professional help, right?
To be understood if you have the clinical issue or a non-clinical issue. Because mostly people have social and emotional issues. Clinical issues come when, somebody is totally dissociated from the reality. So each one of us sitting over here have some story of their life. It doesn't mean that all of them are clinically, upset patients. They have clinical issues. No. It could be behavioral, it could be spiritual, it could be emotional, and it could be clinical too sometimes. Yes. But for that, you need to seek a professional help. Going to somebody who can talk to, even, if it's not even the professional, a trusted friend. Tell your story to her. If there are people who cannot afford professional help, what do they have to do? Find a trusted person. And if you don't find a trusted person either, sit with yourself in an isolated room and imagine as if you're talking to God, and start talking. Start talking, get it out. You will be guided. I believe that.
And thank you for your explanation, by the way, like people, because you answered a big question in my mind, that people who continuously taking therapies, but still they have their own problems.
Mm-hmm.
So person himself or herself is the key here.
Yeah. Therapy can be helpful, but therapy is more about, see, what happens in therapy. CBT is a past associated approach. In past associated approach, you are constantly talking about the trauma. And when you're constantly talking about trauma, you're reliving that. You're spiraling. And then the stress that you came to the therapist with becomes a chronic stress because you're reliving the memory. However, in our tradition, Islamic tradition, we will be tested with fear, loss of food, life. It's mentioned in Quran. But when something happens, we have to acknowledge it first, learn from it and move on. Even, people don't embrace their emotions. They label it. Even that sometimes, there are a few therapists as well who also label the emotions. But emotions are, natural part of your existence. That's why I believe in holistic healing, that you should not label your emotions. If sadness is there hijacking you, think of it as a child. coming to you and seeking for your attention, sit with yourself and ask. But yes, if somebody is really suicidal, then they definitely need a clinical help. But if somebody is going through a rough patch of life, you are having the grief, you are going through the process of grief, that's natural. You have to go through the process of, you have to cry, you have to vent it out. Don't repress it, because then it will be manifested in certain kinds of emotional, somatic, physiological challenges, depending upon the personalities, because we are all different cognitively.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
How would you say the heart of the soul, as you call it, is different? How is it different from the mind? Because sometimes I just hear an inner voice, right?
Yeah.
How do I know where this voice is coming from?
Inner voice?
Because like sometimes it's just one.
It's mind, yeah. So mind, the voice of the mind can be intrusive sometimes, but the voice of the heart is not intrusive. You feel it. Mind can guide you sometimes and can misguide you too, but heart will always guide you. That's the major difference. When you sit with your emotional pain and your mind, and that's how you will recognize. So I'm going to give you an example just to make you understand. For example, there is something happened in your life, right? Something was, someone was unkind. Your mind keeps telling you, this person is so unkind. This person is that, this person, which is true, right? But you start developing a kind of perception as well, and you start generalizing it. That's the voice of mind. But the heart will tell you, hey, your name? Some Reem. Yeah. Hey, Reem, you were unable to see. There were already red flags. You were unable to see. And you will recognize your own mistake. Yes, I was unable to see. How can I extrapolate the lesson? And how can I prevent myself from further harm? Your heart will guide you when you sit with it. With mind, it can just keep coming in day-to-day life, while you're working, mind can start talking. But if you do a lot more meditative practices or just sit with your pain, you're able to hear your heart. That's why silence has its own language that words cannot describe. When you're in silence, your heart speaks. That's what the connection with the inner wisdom looks like. And that's when you will notice that it's not intrusive. It's guiding me. It's a guiding light. The light that guides you home is the voice of heart.
So I have a follow-up question. So when you talk about sitting with yourself, are there any practices you recommend people start with? I don't know, a certain amount of time, certain time of day or something?
Yeah. So certain amount of time, it depends. That when you are emotionally more relaxed, they can do it by themselves too sometimes. But when they're coming to me, I do the inner dynamic on them first, and then I let them practice. I give them the exercises for home. Whenever there is a window for them open, that they can relax, they can do this exercise. So it starts with closing your eyes and dissociating yourself from all the past memories and the future anxiety. Just noticing the rhythm of your breath. Deleting all the thoughts right now. Focusing in the present moment. Celebrating your existence for now. And then think of a moment where you really felt sad, where you really felt broken. Think of that moment. Experience the emotion. And you will find some kind of colors or shape that emotion will pick in your visualization. And that has an interpretation too, by the way. That's what we do in the practice, yeah. That has an interpretation, and then we navigate the person. But you can still, find that voice coming within you. Because you can only connect with your core self when you are in silence. And when you become too, throw in that practice, then it can happen in day-to-day life too. You can have that voice, but most of the time that voice is kind of numb because of our modern mechanical routine of the life. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, just sit with yourself, with your present moment. And thinking about asking yourself question. Instead of judging yourself, ask yourself question. Why did this happen? And you will find an answer within you. This is a notion of inner wisdom. And that's how you will unveil the reality of your own existence. I hope you will, find an answer, inshallah.
I have a question. So I always read like religion books and listen religious lecture, and it always advise to like don't put too much important ourselves. Even to make less the important. Be humble to in order to raise our future. So, but when we look to psychology, I feel like always the opposite. You need to carry yourself, to take first place. Prioritize yourself and your own need. But always, I feel like there is a conflict each other. So
No.
Or am I missing something?
Yeah. So there is a missing thing that you forgot to connect. In religion, we do talk about being kind to others, but at the same time, Islam teaches us how to protect yourself from further harm. There is a hadith in our tradition, Islamic tradition as well, that says if you're bitten once, then it's not your fault. But if you're bitten twice, then it's your fault. So this whole notion of Islamic psychology actually teaches you that. Learn from it and don't get bitten again. So psychology in its true essence is very Islamic. It's very Islamically spiritual. When you learn it, there is a hadith present that I just told you, and focusing on yourself, learning from your mistakes. Don't blame others. Learn from your own self. Where did you lack? Why did this happen? It's called contemplation. It's called reflection. It's called learning. And we are here to learn. Right? So it's not like that you are putting too much focus on yourself. It's more like you are protecting yourself because you're a creature of God. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created you. And our bodies are amana. They don't belong to us. Our children, they don't belong to us. Our parents, they don't belong to us. Imagine if I give you this watch and you take it. You said, hey, I would like to have this watch and I'll give you. And then when I ask you back, you say, no, I don't want to give you back. Right? Right? That's exactly how it is. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us our body, our family. It's all amana. So we have to protect it. We have to protect ourselves.
I don't have any problem with what you just told, but still, I can't convince myself to this idea. I can't combine, honestly. I mean, I'm taking psychology classes to figure out this question. This is my main problem.
You're studying psychology?
Yeah. I just started.
That's a modern psychology that you are studying. That's exactly what I was talking in the introduction. So the modern psychology focuses on the different notion, by the way. It doesn't focus on soul. It focuses on mind and body. Right? So the Islamic psychology, the basic core of Islamic psychology starts with Quran and Sunnah, your heart, and then you build the psychology over the top. Modern psychology doesn't do that. People can take psychology, Arabize the word, they can put some Quranic references, some hadith in it, and then they will call it Islamic psychology. No, Islamic psychology starts with your heart, with your intentions, because, yes.
I'm so sorry for interrupting, but
Yeah.
why I never heard till now, you need to protect yourself, you are so important to, we always, maybe, I don't know, this is only my problem or what, but our religion's advice, even though, like, first select the other's life, give your life for others. I mean, because the all example our prophet or other,
Okay.
so
Yeah, I got your.
you're
Yeah, I got your question. So
Okay.
let me answer your
Just trying
question
to
with the
learn, by the way,
example.
yeah.
Yes, I'm gonna drink the water.
This is one of advice helped me to heal this this question also in my life. Şefkatten maraz doğar. We have to learn how to control
Our
passion,
nafs.
şefkat we call
Nafs.
in Turkish. Yeah.
So now, I drank the entire water. Imagine this is you. You're oozing in pain, right? Now there is another cup here, and I try to pour water. Nothing is coming out. How will you help others if internally you are bleeding, if internally you are not healed? You have to heal yourself. You have to learn from your own mistakes, from that emptiness, in order to help others. You can't pour from an empty cup. So you have to protect your own peace. If you're hurting inside and that hurt is repressed, there is a research of American Psychological Association as well. The repressed emotions can lead to frustration and toxicity. And Islam also teaches us to learn from our mistakes, to control our nafs. It's not that you're focusing on yourself, it's about learning, because this life is a learning journey. So once you learn from your mistakes, once you learn from your life, once you learn from your trauma, you evolve and you're able to help people. How can an unhealed person because you can't pour from an empty cup. Imagine that. This is, as simple as that. If this bottle is full, right? I open this bottle and now I have to help other people. So I have to pour it. The water is coming out. But from this glass, nothing came out.
Is there any daily, I would say chit-chat thing for healing, practical, let's say journaling, or what are the things that you could say?
Yeah.
Let's say I know my pain, or I know what I'm working on, and how can I heal on a daily basis, doing something certain? What would you recommend us to do on a daily basis, something practical?
Yeah. So it depends upon the problem. No, yeah.
I read a lot of religion books. Sorry.
Salah. No, yeah, that's another part of it. But psychologically, Islam, from that Islamic psychological perspective, you can start journaling first. And if you have, depending upon your concern, what is your concern? For example, there are people with that low self-esteem, a negative self-deprecating talk, because they have been in a situation where they were criticized a lot. Okay, I'm just giving you a hypothetical example. There could be, I don't know what your concern is, but for them, I would, for example, recommend reframing. They come to me and they tell me, I'm not good enough. Write that thought and then reframe it.
It's about interpreting how it was.
Because the phenomena of neuroplasticity is real. You know what neuroplasticity is? Neuroplasticity is when what you say, your brain has its ability to believe it. You say it outwardly. I'm good enough. I will do what I want to do and I will be able to achieve my goals.
So we can train our brains.
Your brain will adapt to your lingual patterns. That's a discourse of brain. It adapts to that language. And that's how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created us, in a truest sense. So there is a scientific explanation to, and a religious and spiritual explanation to it as well. Taking care.
Maybe that's why for dreaming, you need to give good
Exactly.
explanation.
It's like you have to align your heart with your root, just like moon and sun, reflecting light. Right? Of course.
This is just on behalf of us. Just,
Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you so much. Thank
This
you
was
so
such a
much.
meaningful, and we have a lot of questions we can continue, but thank you so much.
Of course, of course.
Present.
Oh, that's so sweet.
so much
Thank
for
you so
honoring
much.
us.
Of course. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, we will be in touch, I believe. I
Yeah,
just
of
started
course.
following you on Instagram, so
Oh, that's so sweet.
here's
Thank
the
you.
one on the flyers. So yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much for
Thank
having
you
me.
for being
It was pleasure. Yes.
How can we overcome the feeling of being too late?
Feeling of being too late.
Life.
Oh,
Yeah, because I see even kids aware of many things we wasn't aware of until we got 40. 30s, 40s, and it feels bad. I feel bad about it because maybe we needed it at the childhood. Maybe we needed to overcome pain or trauma, but I don't know. It follows us because of the maybe culture and mindset. Yeah, but you get older and you feel bad.
Don't,
It's
yeah,
burden to blame yourself
yeah.
why you are so naive so far. It's like that, yeah.
Most of the time, this all self blame comes from the conditioning. Understand that why you're self blaming. It's because of the conditioning, because the society has conditioned you in looking at your life in a certain way, right? But how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created you. The flicker in you, the light in you, don't let it dim. The moment you start focusing on, oh, if I do this degree, I'm 40 or 40 plus, just hypothetical example again, people will judge me. People will, this is coming from an emotionally unsafe place. And that emotionally unsafe place is being created in you by your external environment.
Not
Right.
by yours, but
External, because we take other people's opinion too hard on ourselves. Their words cannot reflect your worth. It reflects them, not you. So the moment you recognize the pattern recognition is extremely imperative. The moment you recognize the pattern, that very moment you evolve. Focus, okay, if I want to do it, how will it help me? Ask yourself this question. How will it help me? Anything that in life you want to do. And from there, you will not let that opinion dim your light. Let it glow. Don't wail it, of course.
and trust Allah's timing, right?
Yeah, it is important that we trust Allah's timing, but it is also important that we have to put an effort. We can't just sit quietly and say, okay, we are being patient, we're trusting Allah's timing. No, you have to make certain, yeah, that is important. So that's a realistic and practical approach. But start with the good frequency. For example, if I'm watching CNN and I want to change the channel, right? I will change the channel. So the frequency of the remote, are you able to see the frequency of the remote of the TV or the satellite? No, it just changes because you have to match the frequency of the remote with a certain channel. So remote is your mind, and your goals in your external environment is the TV. Take it like that. So you have to match. If you are starting with the negative outlook that people will judge me, your frequency will not match your goals frequency. You have to align it. You have to start with this mindset. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put this thought in my heart, because it's Allah who puts the thought in our heart, right? Why people would judge me, and I don't care people's opinion. It's a reflection of their personalities, not mine. Reframing, cognitive reframing is extremely important. And it will come from you, not from anybody else.